Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping right into the wild, relentless arena of the African savanna. We're going to unpack a totally fascinating dynamic that goes way beyond the typical nature documentaries you might be used to. We're looking at a silent war, one shaped by drought, famine, and this brutal daily struggle where the balance of power is shifting in ways you would probably never expect. So who truly rules the African savanna? I mean, really take a second and think about it. If I asked you to picture the ultimate apex predator out there, you'd probably imagine this massive lion with a thick mane, or maybe a lightning-fast cheetah sprinting across the plains, right? Well, today, I want you to completely rethink everything you know about the top of the food chain. Because the answer isn't who you think. The real power players emerging out on the grasslands right now, they aren't relying on razor-sharp claws or sheer muscle. Instead, they're using something far more advanced, a weapon that completely rewrites the rules of the wild. Actually, let's zoom out for a second to really understand this battlefield. Our source material sums it up perfectly, stating, "There is no safe day in the African savanna." And they aren't kidding. The environment itself is literally an adversary. It's this unforgiving arena where the heat can easily push past 40 degrees Celsius, blistering temperatures that dry up rivers and drain even the hardiest of creatures. And that brings us to the fundamental rule of this land, Savannah's law. Fight, flee, or fall. Every single day, every creature wakes up and has to make this relentless choice. Out here, every single heartbeat carries this immense weight of risk. One calm morning can instantly turn into absolute chaos if a herd makes even the slightest mistake. Okay, let's look at the fascinating contrast we've got going on here. On one side, you have traditional brute strength. We're talking the muscle, the retractable claws that are basically curved daggers, the absolute explosive speed of the big cats. But on the other side, calculated strategy, unity, communication, tactics. And this is exactly what the baboon troop brings to the savanna. They are quite literally challenging claws with minds. What's truly wild is how brilliantly organized these primates are. A baboon troop isn't just some random group wandering the plains. It's a highly structured hierarchy. We're talking about groups ranging from a few dozen to over 100 individuals, and everyone has a specific role. You've got sentinels constantly scanning the horizon for danger, and guardians protecting the young. They coordinate all of this using an intricate language of calls, barks, and screams. Plus, they're highly adaptable omnivores. They'll eat anything from roots and insects to eggs, crops, and on rare occasions, even young antelope. This incredibly complex structure basically binds the troop into one living, breathing, and formidable organism. But to really appreciate what they pull off, we have to look at the sheer scale of what they're up against. 400. To put that into perspective, that's 400 pounds of pure physical mass, the weight of a mature male lion. This is the undisputed monarch of the savanna, a creature engineered for pure domination with explosive power. And this Goliath is armed with a terrifying weapon, 3, as in 3-inch canines, backed by a bite force capable of literally snapping a buffalo's spine. I mean, think about that. How does a primate, which is nowhere near as fast as a leopard or as strong as a lion, survive that level of predatory perfection? Well, they survive through tactics. Take a typical encounter with a cheetah, for example. It unfolds almost like a military maneuver. First, a single baboon breaks from the troop and actually charges the cheetahs. Second, the cheetahs, whose entire hunting strategy relies on pursuit, are completely startled by this sudden, unexpected defiance. Third, the rest of the troop doesn't scatter. They surge forward as one giant wave, screaming, flashing their teeth, and hurling stones. And finally, step 4, the fastest hunters on Earth retreat, yielding the territory. They use this highly calculated show of force to overwhelm and confuse their predators. It leads to this totally mind-bending reality, where, as the source puts it, the hunters are chased, the hunted stand their ground. This unbelievable moment completely tilts the balance of the savanna. The roles completely reverse. By operating as one united force, the baboons flip from being potential prey into aggressive defenders, proving that unity is a strength far greater than absolute speed. Now, let's see how this strategy holds up against an even bigger threat, the lion. Even for the king of the jungle, triumph is incredibly fleeting out there. Our source outlines a really gripping scenario where a starving, desperate lioness isolates a baboon and manages to make a kill. But because baboon encounters are so chaotic, just an absolute eruption of screams and fury, Other rival lions are instantly drawn to the noise and the scent of blood. They attack the lioness, and her hard-earned meal is stolen right from under her. It just proves that in the wild, victory is never, ever guaranteed. This perfectly summarizes the shifting power dynamics of this entire ecosystem. You've got the lion, the challenged monarch relying on sheer muscle. The cheetah, the startled hunter, relying on absolute speed. The buffalo, basically the living tanks of the grasslands, acting as unyielding prey. And then the baboon, the rising to fire whose primary asset is cooperative intelligence. Survival here is an endless, delicate balance paid for in blood, where absolutely no single creature holds eternal power. But here is where the story takes a pretty serious turn. Because despite mastering the natural battlefield, the greatest threats to baboons no longer come from predators on the savannah. They come from us, humans at its edge. As human territories expand, our villages, farms, and cities are overlapping with the wild, introducing an unseen adversary that is completely rewriting these ancient rules of survival. Consider this really striking, frankly tragic reality. Hands once meant for climbing trees, now sifting through the refuse of civilization. It's a jarring contrast, isn't it? You have these incredibly intelligent, ancient survivalists drawn away from their natural environment and lured by human waste, literally picking through piles of garbage and plastic bags. It's a sad reduction of such an incredibly capable species. Let's break down exactly how this human encroachment is poisoning their world with hazards they just can't fight with numbers. Physically, they face hidden wire snares and traps laid across paths that cause lameness or an incredibly painful death. Basically, traps are replacing claws. Ecologically, widespread deforestation is destroying their shelter and food sources. And biologically, we are seeing the terrifying rise of zoonotic pathogens. And that brings us to a pretty terrifying biological reality. A 2024 warning from the World Health Organization makes it abundantly clear. Viruses like herpes B and other zoonotic pathogens carried by monkeys pose a very real risk to local communities. Because the lines between human settlements and animal territories are blurring so heavily right now, we are opening the door to disease outbreaks that can ripple far beyond the savannah. It threatens human health every bit as much as it threatens animal survival. But the ecological damage might actually be the most devastating part of all this. Every single tree cut down removes shelter and food, forcing the baboons into much closer contact with people. This completely shatters their ancient patterns of movement. Remember how we talked about unity being their greatest defense against cheetahs and lions? Well, under the strain of a changing, deforested world, those troop structures break down. Their ultimate weapon, cooperation, simply fails when there's no habitat left to defend. Which brings us to a powerful question we all really need to deeply consider. What will we choose to do? The savannah is a brilliant reminder that survival is fragile, power is fleeting, and every single life shapes the balance of the wild. But right now, that balance is hanging by a thread. Whether we choose to protect these lands or ignore the creeping influence of our own species is going to decide the future of the wild itself. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible dynamic with me today. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next Explainer.
Welcome to the Explainer. Let's jump right into the intense 40-degree heat of the African savannah. We're looking at a place where the ancient rules of survival are, well, they're currently being violently rewritten. It's an ecosystem that drains even the absolute hardiest of creatures, a battlefield where a silent war is waged every single day beneath the grass and acacia trees.
The source material really hits the nail on the head right away with this quote: "There is no safe day in the African savannah." It reminds us that out here, every single heartbeat carries a massive weight of risk. The morning calm, it can flip into sheer chaos in the blink of an eye. Predators lurk with insane patience, and the herds have to move with constant, unrelenting vigilance.
In this unforgiving arena, shaped completely by famine and drought, brute strength alone just isn't enough. Every creature wakes up to this daily, ruthless ultimatum: fight, flee, or fall. Survival demands speed, cunning, endurance, and honestly, sometimes nothing more than pure dumb luck.
Section 1. The Arena of Survival. Okay, so we have to establish the Goliath of our story, the lion. For generations, the lion has reigned as the undisputed monarch, literally engineered for domination. We're talking about a beast that can weigh over 400 pounds, armed with retractable claws curved like daggers and a bite force capable of snapping a buffalo's spine. Add in those 3-inch canines and you've got one of the most terrifying predators on Earth.
But
You know, even the king's crown has cracks. Our sources detail this fascinating sequence. A lonely buffalo strays from the herd and the lions immediately lock on. But instead of just going down, the buffalo fights back. It charges, lashing its horns like a living tank. And get this, the lions actually retreat empty-mouthed. It just proves that an unyielding will to fight can literally turn the mighty hunters away.
Section 2. Strength in Unity.
Now, physical dominance isn't the only way to survive. Baboons have thrived in harsh Africa for millions of years. They definitely aren't the fastest or the strongest, but they survive through this incredibly tight, rigid society. You have troops ranging from a few dozen to over 100 individuals, all operating basically as one living organism. They use sentinels to stand guard, an intricate language of barks and screams to warn each other, and a highly opportunistic diet. That supreme adaptability is absolutely their greatest weapon.
So you end up with this amazing clash of strategies out on the plains. On one hand, you have the raw, solitary power of apex predators, the monarchs of muscle. On the other, the coordinated defiance of the baboons. When danger hits, baboons don't just scatter blindly. They gather force. They turn into this terrifying wave of screaming, stone-hurling defiance, executing a totally calculated show of force to intimidate predators way bigger than themselves.
Section 3. Challenging the Kings.
Consider this wild encounter. Two cheetah brothers accidentally block a baboon troop's path. The baboons do not panic. Instead, a single baboon breaks rank and charges directly at them. Now, it knows it can't outrun the fastest predator on Earth. But speed isn't the point here. The charge sends a massive message. This territory is not yours. And astonishingly, the swift hunters retreat. The hunter instantly becomes the hunted. Even when apex predators do succeed, the cost is just massive. If a starving lioness manages to catch a stray baboon, she immediately faces an eruption of screams and pure fury from the rest of the troop. All that chaotic noise draws other lions, causing a huge brawl over the kill. Targeting baboons brings literal chaos, proving that in the savannah, even a triumph is dangerously fleeting.
Section 4. The fragile natural balance.
Every single creature here is bound by this incredible law of balance. Lions provide the muscle, while cheetahs are these living arrows of speed, keeping the herds in check. And the herds, in turn, sustain the predators. You've got elephants acting as lands-shaping guardians, hyenas as scavenging warriors, and the baboons rising up as the voice of defiance. It's a violent, merciless, yet beautifully precise circle that holds the wild together.
Section 5. The ultimate human threat.
But as we all know, there's a wild card. As human territories expand into the wild, those ancient rules are completely shattered. Instead of lion claws, baboons are now being maimed by silent, hidden wire snares. We're seeing these brilliant animals forced to sift through toxic human waste, grabbing plastic bottles instead of climbing trees. Their ancient migrations are totally disrupted by this brand new man-made battlefield.
And this unnatural closeness, it's creating a terrifying invisible threat. According to 2024 data from the World Health Organization, zoonotic pathogens like herpes B, carried by monkeys, now pose a very real, severe risk. This isn't just about animal survival anymore. It's blurring the line between human health and the wild, opening the door to outbreaks that could ripple way beyond the savannah.
What's really driving this forced proximity is deforestation. Every time a tree is cut down, it removes vital shelter and food, pushing these animals closer and closer to us. It strains their troop structures so heavily that their greatest weapon, that amazing unified cooperation we talked about, is actually starting to fail under the pressure.
So, survival for these incredible creatures now means facing an adversary unlike any they've ever seen in millions of years of evolution. The delicate balance of the wild is literally hanging by a thread, which leaves us with one massive, undeniable question. What will we choose to do? Whether we protect or ignore is going to completely decide the future of these lands. Thanks for joining this explainer, and keep seeking to understand the world around us.
Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. You know, when we think of the African savannah, we almost always picture raw, unbridled power, right? We imagine massive predators just ruling the grasslands with absolute, uncontested authority. But as I was diving into the sources for today's topic, I found out something pretty wild. That absolute brute strength, it's actively being challenged by some truly unexpected strategy. So let's jump right in and explore how collective intelligence and social bonds can actually stand toe-to-toe with claws, fangs, and sheer muscle. Listen to this quote for a second. "In this world, it is not the strongest who endure, but those who cooperate." Man, that really hits the nail on the head. That single, profound realization perfectly captures the core of what we're talking about today. Survival out in the wild isn't just some heavyweight boxing match where the biggest guy wins. It's way more like an intricate game of chess. And the most successful players? Well, they aren't always the ones with the heaviest punch. They're the ones who have completely mastered the art of working together as one cohesive unit. Section 1. The relentless Savannah. Okay, imagine trying to just survive, let alone hunt or defend yourself in 40 degrees Celsius. For those of us using Fahrenheit, that is a scorching 104 degrees. The African savanna is completely unforgiving. The heat here routinely tops that 40-degree mark, and it just bakes the landscape, drying up vital rivers and draining even the absolute hardiest of creatures. We're talking about a world defined by famine, severe drought, and this harsh, constant struggle. The environment itself is literally the first great predator you face. It makes daily life an absolute test of endurance before an animal even crosses paths with a hunter. So the savanna is far more than just that picturesque landscape of golden horizons and scattered acacia trees you see in documentaries. It is a relentless, high-stakes arena of survival. Think about your daily commute for a second. Now imagine having to be on high alert for a lethal predator every single time you stepped out your front door. That's their reality. Predators are lurking with immense patience, and herds have to move with constant, absolute vigilance. The balance here is incredibly fragile. Literally, a single mistake, just one misplaced step, can flip the morning calm into complete and total chaos. Every single heartbeat carries the immense weight of risk. Section 2. Strategy over brute strength. Let's set up the ultimate matchup. On one side, you have the lion, the undisputed monarch of the plains. A mature male can weigh well over 400 pounds. He's armed with 3-inch canines, retractable claws that are basically curved daggers, and a bite force strong enough to snap a buffalo's spine. Pure, engineered domination. But then, on the other side, you have the unlikely underdog, the baboon. Now, they aren't as fast as a leopard, and there's no way they're as strong as a lion. But don't count them out. They're broad-shouldered, powerfully built, and they pack sharp canines of their own, but their real secret weapon, intricate communication, and absolute complete unity when navigating danger. So how does this underdog actually pull it off? Well, their greatest weapon is adaptability. They operate in these tight, highly structured groups, anywhere from a few dozen to well over 100 individuals. And within this troop, rank, loyalty, and kinship absolutely rule the day. They even have designated sentinels. Their sole job, just stand guard and scan the horizon for threats. It's like a neighborhood watch on extreme mode. They use this incredibly intricate language of calls, barks, and screams to coordinate movement, basically binding the whole group together into one living, breathing organism. Plus, they are highly opportunistic eaters, roots, insects, eggs, you name it. That kind of adaptability lets them thrive where a lot of other animals would just falter. Now, here is where it gets really fascinating. When danger approaches, they do not just scatter blindly in a panic like most prey animals do. Instead, they execute something known as the wave of defiance. First, instead of running away, they actually gather their force together. Then comes the noise. Screaming, flashing teeth, hurling stones. And finally, they do this sudden, unified surge forward, immediately followed by a quick retreat. It is brilliant. It's a highly calculated show of force designed to completely confuse and intimidate predators that are many, many times their size. It's pure strategy over panic. Section 3. Challenging apex predators. So, can a primate outrun the fastest predator on Earth? Let's picture a sudden standoff out on the plains. A baboon troop is moving along, and suddenly their path is blocked by a pair of cheetah brothers. The cheetahs are totally wired with tension, senses razor sharp, and then the chase ignites. But watch this. One single baboon breaks from the troop and actually surges directly at the cheetahs. Now, basic physics tells us there's no way the primate wins a foot race here. It seems like an absolutely impossible scenario, right? But here is the brilliant twist. Speed is not the point at all. The charge itself is a message. That solitary baboon isn't trying to win a race. He's telling them, hey, this territory is not yours. Cheetahs are built entirely to pursue, so when they suddenly find themselves being pursued, it completely short-circuits their instincts. The sheer audacity of the troop's surge actually forces these incredibly swift hunters to yield the plains. The hunted literally stand their ground, and raw defiance actually beats absolute speed. How crazy is that? Of course, we have to keep things in perspective. Baboons are still prey. They definitely aren't untouchable. If a hungry lioness manages to single out an isolated baboon that's broken away from the safety of the herd, well, the result is sheer chaos. but baboons rarely go down easy. The hunt triggers an absolute eruption of screams and fury from the troop. And here's the really sobering reality of the savannah. Even when the lioness succeeds, her victory is usually super fleeting. All that rage and screaming, it draws rival lions right to the spot, sparking a massive, brutal skirmish over the kill. In this environment, even a hard-won victory is temporary at best.
Section 4. The shifting power balance.
So what we're seeing is that the savannah isn't just a simple monarchy with the lion wearing the crown. It's a deeply complex web of roles. You've got the lion, relying on that immense muscle and bone-crushing power. You've got the cheetah, gambling absolutely everything on pure speed. The buffalo? That guy stands his ground like a living tank, using raw physical force. And then you have the baboon, stepping up as the defiant challenger, bringing intelligence and troop unity to carve out its own survival. The predators keep the herds in check, and the herds sustain the predators. There are literally no absolute victors here. It's just this precise, sometimes violent circle that keeps the wild alive. Section 5. The ultimate threat, humanity. Now we have to look at the invisible threat creeping into the edges of this world. As human territories expand, the age-old rules of survival are being fundamentally rewritten. Natural predators with claws are being replaced by hidden snares and wire traps, silent, man-made hazards laid out in the grass that cause really devastating injuries. Baboon hands, which were perfectly evolved for climbing and foraging, are now frequently forced to scavenge through human plastic waste. Rampant deforestation is actively removing their shelter and food sources, pushing them closer and closer to our settlements. And ultimately, the pressures of this rapidly changing world are severely disrupting those ancient troop structures that have successfully kept them alive for millions of years. And the impact doesn't stop at the tree line. According to 2024 data from the World Health Organization, these shrinking territories are creating some really dangerous biological overlaps. Zoonotic pathogens, like herpes B, which is carried by monkeys, can move easily between primates and people. When wildlife is forced to venture that close to human civilization, the line between human health and animal survival gets super blurry. It creates a severe variable for both the local ecosystems and human communities, quite literally opening the door to disease outbreaks that can ripple far, far beyond the borders of the savannah. So, what does this all mean? What do our choices mean for the incredibly fragile balance of these lands and the creatures who call them home? The baboon troop proves that survival against the raw forces of nature requires unbreakable unity, constant adaptation, and real intelligence. But human expansion? That is an entirely different kind of adversary. The balance is quite literally hanging by a thread right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep your eyes open to the fascinating dynamics of our world. Catch you next time.